By 1939, Europe was already at war. Germany had invaded Poland in September 1939. Britain and France declared war, but the fighting in the West was slow. By April 1940, Germany had conquered Denmark and Norway. In May, the Wehrmacht moved through Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg, then into France. France fell quickly. By June 1940, German forces occupied most of Western Europe. Britain was alone against the Axis on the Western Front. The British Army had escaped from Dunkirk, but most of its heavy equipment was left behind. Germany now controlled the continent, except for Britain and parts of neutral countries. Hitler's focus turned east. He believed that controlling Europe gave Germany a strong strategic position. But the Soviet Union remained large and powerful. Its resources, oil, grain, metals, were tempting. Hitler also hated communism. Bolshevism, in his view, was a mortal enemy of Germany. Germany's leadership believed that a quick strike could defeat the Soviet Union. The army was strong, experienced, and confident after victories in the West. Hitler planned to use this momentum before winter, hoping to secure Lebensraum, living space in the East for Germans. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union had been observing Germany carefully. Stalin had made agreements with Hitler, including the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. This gave Germany time to prepare for war in the West without fearing the East. But tensions remained. By the end of 1940, Germany had control of Western Europe. Hitler's generals were confident. The economy was ready to support another campaign. The stage was set for a decision that would change the course of history, whether Germany would invade the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union in 1940 was vast. Its territory stretched from the Baltic Sea in the west to the Pacific in the east. Millions of people lived across cities, towns, and rural areas. Its industry and resources were enormous, including oil in the Caucasus, coal in the Donbass, and grain in Ukraine. Germany and the Soviet Union had signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact in 1939. It created a temporary non-aggression agreement and divided parts of Eastern Europe into spheres of influence. Both sides cooperated in certain areas, like the occupation of Poland. But deep mistrust remained. Hitler had no intention of leaving the Soviet Union intact forever. German intelligence studied the Soviet military. Officers estimated the Red Army's size and readiness. They noted weaknesses, poor training in some units, outdated equipment, and logistical difficulties. Hitler believed a swift, massive strike could destroy the Soviet army before it could fully mobilize. Planning for invasion began in late 1940. German leaders calculated troop movements, rail transport, supply lines, and fuel needs. Winter conditions were a concern, but Hitler and his generals hoped speed would overcome weather. Political justification was also prepared. Hitler framed the war as a fight against Bolshevism and for German living space. By early 1941, Germany had built up one of the largest armies in history, ready on the eastern frontier. The decision to invade was not sudden. It combined ideology, strategy, and opportunity. Hitler was poised to strike. The stage was now set. Europe was under German control, Britain still resisted, and the Soviet Union awaited an attack it did not fully expect. Hitler saw the Soviet Union as the center of a world threat, Bolshevism. He believed communism was a Jewish conspiracy against Germany. The invasion was framed as a struggle to destroy this ideology. At the same time, Hitler wanted Lebensraum, or living space for Germans. He imagined colonizing the East with German settlers. Cities and villages were to be reshaped. Farms would feed Germany. Natural resources would fuel its war machine. This was not abstract thinking. Maps in Berlin showed regions of Ukraine, the Caucasus, and Russia. Generals and officers studied them carefully. They calculated how quickly German forces could advance and which areas would be occupied first. Civilians and soldiers alike were influenced by ideology. Training emphasized the moral duty to fight communism. Propaganda framed the campaign as a defensive and necessary war, even though it was aggressive. The ideology shaped strategy. Hitler insisted on rapid advances. He did not tolerate delays. This decision ignored some military realities but reflected his belief in the superiority of German forces and the inevitability of victory. Inside the command room, debates were tense. Some generals warned that the Soviet Union was too large and powerful to conquer quickly. They noted long supply lines and harsh winter conditions. Hitler dismissed many concerns. He argued that surprise, speed, and the will of the German people would decide the campaign. His political authority ensured his plan moved forward, even if some military leaders disagreed. This tension shaped the invasion plan. Decisions were made quickly. Resources were allocated according to Hitler's priorities. Troops, tanks, and aircraft were positioned to strike the Soviet border with maximum force. Hitler's political control over the military created a clear chain of command. It allowed rapid preparation, but also meant dissenting opinions were minimized. The invasion became as much a political act as a military one. Germany needed raw materials to continue its war. Oil, grain, coal, and metals were scarce in Western Europe. The Soviet Union had abundant supplies. Control over Ukraine, the Caucasus, and the Black Sea ports would secure vital resources. Planning included rail transport for captured supplies, stockpiles for advancing armies, and the expected capture of industrial centers. Economic gain was a major factor in Hitler's decision. It was not just ideology, it was about keeping Germany's war machine fueled. German intelligence underestimated the Red Army. Reports highlighted poor training, outdated equipment, and inefficiency in command. Hitler believed that a fast, massive attack could destroy Soviet forces before they reorganized. 3 army groups were prepared: north toward Leningrad, center toward Moscow, and south toward Ukraine. Tanks, infantry, and air support were coordinated for a rapid advance. The plan relied on speed and surprise, ignoring potential resistance in deeper territories. The combination of ideology, politics, economy, and perceived weakness shaped Germany's decision. Hitler believed the invasion was both necessary and achievable. German planners knew the Soviet Union was vast. Distances were enormous. Supplies would be stretched thin. Yet Hitler believed speed would prevent these problems. The risk was clear. If the advance slowed, German forces could be trapped. Winter, cold, and mud were major concerns. Logistics were a constant challenge. Officers calculated fuel, food, and ammunition needs carefully. Despite risks, Hitler insisted on surprise and aggression. The German high command debated timing, but Hitler pushed for early summer 1941. He wanted to defeat the Soviet Union before the next winter. Risk assessment was secondary to ideology and perceived opportunity. Soviet intelligence underestimated German intentions. Reports of troop movements along the western frontier were often dismissed. Stalin believed Hitler would not attack before defeating Britain. This misjudgment left the Red Army partially unprepared. German planners exploited this. They counted on surprise to paralyze Soviet defenses. Stalin's caution and disbelief allowed Germany to amass forces without immediate Soviet response. Hitler's decision reshaped the war. Invading the Soviet Union meant opening the Eastern Front, creating the largest theater of war in history. Resources, divisions, and air support were diverted east. Western operations, including the fight against Britain, had to adjust. The invasion promised enormous gains if successful: territory, resources, and elimination of a major ideological opponent. But it also risked overextending Germany, tying down forces that might be needed elsewhere. The decision to invade was not just strategic. It was ideological and aggressive. Millions of civilians would be affected. Plans included occupation, forced labor, and control of conquered territories. The war would not be limited to armies. It would affect millions of people across vast lands. Germany's motives combined ideology, greed, and strategic calculation. The human cost was a part of the plan, not an unintended consequence. The invasion was set. Forces were ready. The date for the attack was chosen: June 1941. The eastern frontier is alive with movement. German divisions line up along the border. Tanks rumble across fields. Infantry marches in precise columns. Supply trucks follow carefully planned routes. Aircraft roar overhead, ready to provide air support. Command posts are busy with officers monitoring communications, maps, and troop positions. 3 army groups are prepared. Army Group North moves toward Leningrad. Army Group Center targets Moscow. Army Group South heads for Ukraine. Hitler and his generals finalized last-minute orders. Intelligence reports are double-checked. Weather reports are reviewed to ensure the attack starts under optimal conditions. Every hour matters. Delays could give the Soviets time to strengthen defenses. Logistics dominate planning. Fuel, ammunition, food, and medical supplies are stockpiled along rail lines. Engineers prepare bridges and roads. Officers calculate distance, speed, and expected resistance. Winter is still months away, but planning accounts for cold and snow if the campaign drags on. The troops sense anticipation. Soldiers know they will cross into Soviet territory soon. The tension is visible in faces, movements, and silent conversations. Germany is ready to strike. The invasion is about to begin. June 22, 1941. Dawn breaks over the eastern frontier. German forces cross the Soviet border. Artillery opens fire. Air raids hit key Soviet positions. Infantry moves forward in coordinated attacks. Tanks roll across open fields. Railways and roads are targeted to disrupt Soviet supply lines. Army Group North advances toward Leningrad. Army Group Center pushes toward Smolensk and Moscow. Army Group South heads into Ukraine. Speed and surprise are crucial. German forces aim to encircle and destroy Soviet armies before they can regroup. Soviet units are caught off guard. Communication is disrupted. Commanders struggle to organize defenses. Some units fight fiercely, others are scattered. Red Army soldiers face a sudden and overwhelming attack. Within hours, towns are taken. Rail lines and bridges are destroyed. Fires break out in supply depots. German units push deeper, following precise plans. Logistics teams work behind the front to keep fuel, ammunition, and food moving forward. Hitler watches reports from Berlin. Maps are updated constantly. The initial success confirms his belief in speed and planning. Yet the scale of the Soviet Union means the campaign will be long, vast, and difficult. Germany has struck. The largest land invasion in history has begun. The consequences of the decision, shaped by ideology, strategy, and ambition, will unfold across millions of square miles and countless lives. The invasion of the Soviet Union brought immediate destruction and chaos. Towns and villages along the border were damaged or destroyed. Fires burned through supply depots, railways, and factories. Civilians fled in panic. Roads were clogged with refugees carrying what little they could. Hospitals struggled to treat the wounded. The human cost was enormous. Thousands of soldiers from both sides were killed in the first weeks. Civilians suffered from bombings, artillery fire, and the disruption of daily life. Food shortages quickly appeared as supply lines were cut and farms were abandoned. The Red Army faced severe setbacks. Many units were encircled and destroyed. Prisoners were taken in large numbers. Yet despite early losses, Soviet forces began reorganizing deeper within the territory. Factories were moved east of the Ural Mountains. Railways were repaired and troops redeployed. In Berlin, initial reports celebrated rapid advances. Hitler's leadership appeared validated. Yet generals warned that the size of the Soviet Union, the resilience of its people, and harsh winters could challenge the campaign. The scale of destruction, the human suffering, and the logistical strain foreshadowed a prolonged and difficult conflict. Germany had achieved surprise, but victory was far from certain. As the summer of 1941 ended, the consequences of Germany's decision became clearer. Soviet civilians were displaced. Many towns had been destroyed, farms abandoned, and families uprooted. Life became a struggle for survival. People worked to rebuild homes, clear rubble, and resume farming. The Red Army reorganized. New divisions were formed, factories moved east, and supplies stockpiled for the coming winter. Despite early losses, Soviet resistance grew. Planning and intelligence improved. The human and industrial capacity of the Soviet Union became a formidable obstacle. Germany faced challenges too. Supply lines stretched over vast distances. Winter was approaching. Troops became fatigued. Early victories could not erase the logistical and strategic difficulties of occupying such a massive territory. Historians later noted that Hitler's ideological and economic motives, while clear, underestimated Soviet resilience. Strategic miscalculations would cost Germany dearly. Millions of soldiers and civilians paid the price for decisions made in command rooms in Berlin. The invasion reshaped the Eastern Front. It opened the largest theater of war in history. The consequences of the decision, both human and strategic, would last for years. Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union was not just a military operation. It was the result of ideology, ambition, and calculation. Hitler combined anti-communism, a desire for living space, and the pursuit of resources into a plan that reshaped the map of Europe. The human cost was immense. Millions of soldiers died in the first months, and civilians were caught in the destruction. Entire towns were burned, families displaced, and the hardships of war reached far beyond the battlefield. Yet, the Soviet Union endured. Factories were moved, armies reorganized, and resistance grew stronger with every loss. Strategically, the decision revealed both the power and the limits of planning. Germany could strike with speed and surprise, but it underestimated the size, resilience, and capacity of its enemy. Logistics, weather, and sheer geography would challenge even the most disciplined army. Historically, this moment teaches that ideology and ambition can drive nations to immense risk. It shows how decisions made in command centers ripple across landscapes and generations. The invasion was more than a war. It was a test of human endurance, strategy, and the consequences of choices guided by both belief and greed. The story of why Germany invaded Russia is not only about an army on the move. It is about the ideas, decisions, and calculations that set history in motion, and the human lives forever changed by that choice. Call to action. If this story of ambition, ideology, and endurance resonated with you, share it. Learn from history. Understand how decisions shape nations and lives. Subscribe to explore more untold stories of World War II, where real people faced real events, and history speaks for itself.